gods to elect them. Rene Silva, alive, revive, survive.
Would you like to hear the truth or a good story? Which do you prefer? If that was asked of me, I'd personally say I prefer the good story. But what if the truth sometimes is even more sensational, even more unbelievable than a natural story? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, guests, I have such a tale for you this evening. It is a story of extraordinary persistence, perseverance, and pluck in the face of pretty outstanding odds. Our story begins in the year 1914. It was the year of age of exploration. Polar exploration was at its zenith. The South Pole had just been reached by the Norwegian Roald Amundsen. He beat his English compatriot, Robert Falcon Scott, there by about a month. Scott's party, in fact, perished in their endeavor. Moving on from this, an explorer of Irish birth by the name of Ernest Henry Shackleton. You may have heard the name before. Mounted an expedition to become the first team to cross the Antarctic continent from one side to the other. That's what they set out to achieve. On the 5th of August, as the First World War was breaking out in Europe, they set sail from New Plymouth. They made their way down the Atlantic Ocean till they got to the tiny island of South Georgia, which is the last inhabited place before Antarctica. On the 5th of December, they sailed out from South Georgia, and almost immediately, their ship, which was named Endurance, which would prove to be very apt in this situation, was surrounded by, or encountered, pack ice. Now, pack ice is those ice floors that you see. They're kind of like little icebergs, and they can be very dangerous to a ship, especially wooden ships back in those days. So they were surrounded by this pack ice, which showed no signs of abating. By the 18th of January, 1915, the ice had completely encased the ship Endurance and could go no further back, left, right, nowhere. They were stuck. The men got out with the picks, tried to hack away at the ice, but it was futile. It was doing them no good whatsoever. The ice wouldn't melt either as the Southern Hemisphere summer went on. And then the grim reality began to dawn upon them. They were stuck there for an Antarctic winter. Pretty gruesome stuff, an Antarctic winter, as you can imagine. And Ernest Shackleton really showed his leadership here in this case. So he understood the importance of team morale. And they had organized races for the dogs, football matches onto the ice. They did amateur theater, celebrated special occasions. One of the photographs I'd seen, the men were giving each other's haircuts. None of them was barber. They were just having a bit of fun doing it. There's laughs and things going on. This is all documented by a man called Frank Hurley, one of our own, a gentleman from Sydney who was a ship's photographer. Goes to show in an age of stiff upper lips, early 20th century, you see the photographs. Nice to know that people could still have fun, could have a laugh, even in that time, and even such stressful situations. The ice, though, refused to join in the fun. It's cold, calculating, and refused to release its vice-like grip onto the ship. Eventually, on the 27th of October, 1915, the ice moved in and crushed the ship, and sank below the ice floes. The men salvaged what they could, and now were faced with the reality of having to camp out onto the ice. Temperatures of minus 30 degrees Celsius. Yeah, it was a picnic, not quite. They had lifeboats with them, the supplies they could salvage, and they seek to move to land. The only land that they could really go to was a rocky outcrop called Elephant Island before the ice did melt. Dragging the lifeboats along, they made it there on the 16th of April. Now it's 1916. And then the other grim reality began to dawn upon them. Because help wasn't coming to them. They had to go out there and get it for themselves, or perish. The 24th of April, 1916, Ernest Shackleton and 5 other men, and the men he chose were the best he could, and also some that he didn't want to leave the rest, because they were disruptive types. He put his second in command in charge on Elephant Island and said, "I'll be gone, I'll be coming back with help." And they sailed in one of the lifeboats called the James Caird across the Southern Ocean, aiming for South Georgia, where they started from. It's a tiny island. There's 2,500 kilometers of nothing but water in between them and the island. Oh, and if they miss the island, the next bit of land is Africa, nearly 5,000 kilometers away. For a bit of perspective, as a crow flies from Melbourne to Darwin, it's only about 3,500 kilometers. That's what they were faced with. And so they set out, 6 men. And it was a perilous journey in itself. Seas were rough. On 2 days, there was no wind at all. They just had to drop anchor and just float, bob along in the ocean like a cock. But eventually, after a 16-day journey, they did make it to South Georgia, except that they landed on the south side of the island, and all the human habitation was on the north side. They didn't have supplies, too weak to go on for another sea journey. They had to cross over onto the land. Now, this wasn't the end of it, because on their maps, the middle was just a blank. No one had ever been across the middle of South Georgia before. They were going to have to be pioneers, explorers again, and get to the other side. After a 3-day journey, they did achieve this. And on the 21st of May, 1916, they stumbled into Stromness, the whaling station of South Georgia. At about 7 a.m., they heard the foghorn going for the starting of the day's activities. It was the first human sound made, apart from their own, that they'd heard since 1914. And it was like music to the men's ears, because they were safe. Apart from the 22 that were left behind on Elephant Island. And it took another 4 attempts before it was safe enough to actually go down and rescue the other 22 men from there. But at the end of the day, finally on the 30th of August, 1916, they were saved. It had been 643 days since they had set out from South Georgia for the first time. You heard these stories where you hear people getting lost in the desert, in the wilderness, at sea, survive for 3, 4, 7 days. You think, God, that's remarkable, how the hell did they hold on? Imagine having to do that day after day after day for 643 consecutive days in an inhospitable land as the icy continent. But out of the 28 men that set sail, all 28 returned alive. 100% success rate, which is rare for that time, even when everything did tend to go according to plan. And I guess the lesson I really take out of this is, no matter what the situation is and how bad that things can get, always try to keep your chin up. Never ever give up in the face of insurmountable odds. It's Toastmaster.